Welcome one, welcome all to this very special episode of Talk Heathen. I am Fat Jesus.
No, you're not.
I am genetically modified skeptic.
No, that's me.
Anderson Cooper?
Try one more time.
I'm Mr. Atheist.
And I'm genetically modified skeptic.
Today we have a very special episode for you.
Today on Talk Heathen, we're going to be reviewing some clips that are some highlights and maybe some lowlights of the show too. So I'm excited to see some of the cool things that Eric and Jaime have said and some of the guests have said, and then also some of the cringe that the callers have said.
And I can assure you there is cringe coming up. But in the meantime, you might want to know who we are if you haven't seen me before on the channel, like the last time I did one of these clip shows. I'm Mr. Atheist. I have a show in my own channel, but a show called Dear Mr. Atheist. I also do the atheist interviews for the atheist community of Austin. And this is Drew from Genetically Modified Skeptic. All right, let's move. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I'm a full-time atheist, skeptic, YouTuber. I make videos about pseudoscience and atheism and religion and all kinds of stuff like that. Been on Talk Heathen one time before, and I'm really excited to be able to do the clip show because I really like cringe.
Now, Drew, let me ask you this. What do you say to reports that you are actually a plant from Ray Comfort to infiltrate the atheist community and destroy it from within?
Our first clip is from a show where they spoke to a caller from Long Island, New York. I think you're going to find it pretty interesting.
So to be clear, if you were to learn, for example, that there was historical evidence that demonstrated that the Jewish people were never slaves in Egypt, would that shift what you believe about that story in the Bible?
Historically, what I understand, since I predicted that the pyramids were the original Garden of Eden structures left, I think they were just basically slaves taking care of cleaning and not lifting tons of boulders. That don't seem possible.
Okay, so you believe that the pyramids in Egypt are the original Garden of Eden structures?
Yes, I believe they are.
Why?
Yeah, no shit, why?
I don't know how much asking why is really going to be helpful with this guy. Might be a little too far gone, but you know, Jamie's a patient guy, so.
Yeah, no kidding. And to tell you the truth, the rest of the call, you don't really get a good answer to why, but like, this is actually, while it's really funny, and like, guys, I'm not saying it was Eden.
But it was Eden.
One of the things that really turned me off about religion was noticing, so like I grew up as a Mormon, and every Mormon had a different version of what it means to be Mormon, while they still have this one collective religion. At the level of the individual, it's all so subjective. And so I kind of came to this point where I was like, okay, maybe everybody's wrong. And then I thought about my life and my religion and everything I had learned through the filter of what if everyone's wrong and I was an atheist, or I at least wasn't a Mormon or a Christian anymore at that point.
Yeah, Matt Dillahunty told me last week that, yeah, there's kind of an individual definition of God or a particular religion in every conversation with a believer. So if you go down that rabbit hole in a conversation as far as defining a certain God or a certain religion, a lot of the time you're not going to be that productive.
Right. Yeah, it's so much less than the concept of is any one religion true. At this point, it's is any one person right? Because I don't think you could find two people who agree on every fact, with the exception of those people who are like, I've decided this person is in charge of my religious life, and whatever they say, I will accept as gospel. That'd be the closest you get.
Yeah, so the best way to do religion is to be in a cult. You heard it first time here on Talk Heathen. Yep,
I did it. It was fun. Speaking of cults, Drew, I'm curious, what do you see as the distinction between religion and cults?
Well, there's a lot of different definitions of cult, and I've talked about this on my channel before, but largely I define a cult as it's a religious movement, but it has a lot of factors or a lot of features that focus on controlling its adherents as much as possible.
Right. Yeah, and so mine also would include like a distinct religious figure who, even though they might say isn't worshipped, they're worshipped. So Mormonism, for example, has their prophet, and it comes back to Joseph Smith. It's funny though, because the lines are pretty blurry at some places. Like, is the Pope a cult figure or a religious figure? And the honest answer for me is there isn't a ton of difference, except for whether or not it's been accepted as mainstream. But one of the religions that I think ticks all the boxes of a cult, for me at least, is Islam, and that is the perfect setup for this next clip out of Pakistan. And the guy did use a pseudonym, Cool Fan. My guess is because it's not safe to be an atheist in Pakistan. So here we go.
I'm guessing you were not Christian. What religion did you come out of?
Muslim, out of Islam.
So what was it that brought you out? I mean, what started that? What started you questioning?
What brought me out? Hey, here's what brought me out. Okay, the fact that if it is so important, right, the hell and the heavens are so important that anybody and everybody should worship a God, any God, right? If it is so important, the heaven and hell is so, why the God isn't here to tell me that? Why their salesmen are here to tell me that?
Well, they speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't it? Where has God to tell me all that? I mean, he wants me to worship 5 times a day. And, he never even bothered to show up once a week, right? Once a year. Forget
once a millennia. Yeah.
Why a book with different versions?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a very ardent reader of history, so I don't know if you are aware of that Quran that they found in Sana'a, which is like the oldest Quran that was ever found in history. You should look it up. It's called Sana'a Quran, right? Okay.
Is it different?
It's a Quran that was radically different.
Really?
It's like, you are not going to believe how
That's
different
awesome.
The meanings are completely different, and everything is completely different. And it comes to me is that, what the fuck are we talking about? Seriously, on one hand, we're talking about a prophet who somehow found some sort of creature who flew up into the sky and meet prophet and all that. And on the other hand, he's talking about, knowing everything is closer to your juggernaut. When I really do need him, he's nowhere to be found. What the fuck, man? It's just ridiculous, seriously. The whole idea of God is just absurd. It's just fantasy. It's just stories. And if it is really that important, it all boils down to that same thing, isn't it? If it is really that important, I don't need a salesman. I don't need someone to tell me what is right from wrong. I'm capable of my own decisions. I don't need to tell me that if I say the prophet was a fucking idiot, you don't say that or gonna put in hell. Fuck you.
I'm actually not so afraid of the hell part. I'm afraid of the being in a place where the government might take action.
Yeah.
I think I would. But you, sir, have some brass balls, and I applaud you for it.
That's a compliment.
Stay awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep asking, and as long as you feel comfortable, keep talking about it.
Yeah.
Because
thanks, man.
If you can be.
Yeah.
If you can.
Well, first of all, Eric is totally right. I mean, you have to have some serious guts to be able to stand against Islam in Pakistan. I mean, I've heard people like Majid Nawaz, who's a Muslim reformer, talk about how in Pakistan you can be put to death for being a Muslim, but largely the people that you're in danger from are actually the people, not just the government. I mean, the people may rise up and mob rule will rule there. So the fact that this guy, I mean, even just using a pseudonym, calling into the show is incredibly brave, and ex-Muslims in the Middle East and South Asia are just heroes to me. Yeah,
the other thing is, so again, kind of take it away. Cool Fan seems like an awesome dude. Definitely takes a lot of balls to something I know from coming from like a deeply indoctrinated religious place is it takes a lot of balls to even start having doubts, because people start to detect those doubts and become hostile towards you. And so that he's made his all the way out and just with the what the fuck. I love the way he says what the fuck. But the other problem I see here is, so he was talking about this other Quran, and to tell you the truth, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not saying, I'm not at all casting doubt on it. I am not familiar with that story at all. In fact, real quick, are you, Drew? Do you know what he's talking about?
No, I hadn't heard of that. I mean, I know that there are some documents that conflict with the Quran that are of similar origin, but I don't know about the specific instance he's talking about.
Gotcha. So I just want to, for the sake of argument, I want to grant it that it's true. And maybe it isn't, and maybe I'm an idiot for doing that. But if it is true, it kind of once again shows that level of like, I ask the question to people all the time, if you're wrong about your religion, what could convince you? And apparently, presuming this is true, even finding a Quran that is radically different and in direct conflict with your present day beliefs, that is older than yours, apparently that's still not it. Like, apologetics for any religion will always catch up and come up with a reason why this really doesn't have to bother us. Though maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not catching up anymore. Maybe that's why the religious nuns are one of the fastest growing groups in America. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's totally right when he calls these apologists and religious people salesmen. Because, yeah, that's what they end up being at the end of the day. And what do salesmen do? No matter what you say against them, their goal is to sell you the product. And a lot of the time, the devotion is exactly the same for apologists in really any religion.
I think it was Hitchens who said that if he met God, the first thing he would say or ask is, why did you spend so much time and effort into concealing your existence from me? And it's not as though... It would be one thing if you could actually do Pascal's wager. For example, if there was this one God and he's the one story and he's like, look, if you just pretend you think I might exist, I'll let you into heaven. But it's not just that. Not that would do it for me. Without empirical evidence, I still wouldn't believe. But it is the case that it's not just like, oh, the real test is whether or not you believe, despite all of the evidence not to believe. It's whether or not you believe, and then commit your whole life and start giving money and start treating people a certain way and start behaving a certain way. Like, if it is that dire and I need to do that much, even if you still showed up and was like, hey, I'm God, look, water into wine, and no one has a small penis anymore. Like that would be enough evidence of a miraculous God, extremely miraculous in my case, and and there'd still be faith stuff left, like that he is there for the reasons he says he is, and all of that. It's the consequences of not believing are so dire that if you don't have a good reason, I'm not gonna. Yeah,
I mean, apparently God cares so much, like Cool Fan said. God cares so much about all of this stuff, and it cares how you respond to him. You know, he wants you to pray 5 times a day, and a lot of different practices in Islam make the Hajj and everything, and yet he won't show up once a week. He won't show up once a year or century or millennium or whatever. And I mean, he hasn't actually made the effort to convince the majority of the people in the entire world that Islam is true, and yet he expects devotion from everyone in the world. It's really nonsensical.
Come on, God, just show up in this video behind one of us. There's not a lot of space behind me, but wouldn't that just be amazing? We might be able to beat like Justin Bieber out for the most viewed video on YouTube. The next clip we have, I understand, was a question somebody posed to me. We'll both take it, I guess, but I'll just let it speak for itself.
I'm a happy guy. Okay, then, for Mr. Atheist, was talking about the war between the universe farting pixies and the pooping trolls and the farting pixies, or did I get that backwards? Why are they fighting, and what does each side need to win?
So the question here is, now I have mentioned in my videos about universe pooping trolls. And also there was some stuff about Skittles in there too, but the main thing was universe pooping trolls. And then someone brought up that Matt Dillahunty often talks about universe farting pixies. And now my understanding is that these two rival factions are at war, and I'm going to stand behind my boys, the universe pooping trolls.
Well, the thing that the trolls or pixies need to win, and this tells you who has already won, is more subscribers on the part of their creator. So, sorry, Jimmy.
Low blow. I'm 9 months in. Give it time. So, in conclusion, universe pooping trolls would win, as you'll now see Genetically Modified Skeptic agree. Oh yeah, universe pooping trolls. That's it for sure. All right, back to things that are a little more serious.
Oh, now we are going to talk about free will, and Aron Ra maybe being a higher power.
Are you familiar with Mr. Aron Ra?
Aron Ra, I'm looking at him right now.
I am familiar
Aron,
with
come on in here.
Is it true that Aron Ra thinks himself a god and uses
Come here.
his name as describe himself as a god? Is that correct?
All right.
Or on one of your shows?
Hold on.
I have him right
Actually,
here.
he just walked in
So-
and kissed Eric on the face.
Thank you for bringing me into the show.
how's it going,
That
brother?
was maddening. This guy says that free will is what causes all the suffering, but there's heaven where you have free will and you don't have suffering. So obviously the free will isn't causing the suffering. His answer is wrong. He can't understand that his answer is wrong because he can't understand things.
No, he's just got the cognitive dissonance. But
Adolf
Aron,
Hitler
I appreciate you.
had
I love you, man.
free
All
will.
right.
Adolf Hitler
Get out of my studio.
had free will. He chose to use it in the wrong way.
Then argue with Adolf Hitler, and while you're at it, why don't you argue with all of the Nazis that had inscribed on their belt buckles, Gott
is-
mit uns, God with us?
Yeah.
You know what the first thing I noticed about this video was? It's Robert from Long Island. That's got to be the same as Rob from Long Island with the pyramids earlier, right?
Oh my God. I'm not sure if I hate or love this guy right now.
The call is coming from within the house.
Wait, and so he's also saying that Aron thinks that he's a god because he, uses the name Ra. And so is he saying that he's acknowledging that Ra is a god? Also, that connects it to the whole pyramids thing. This is making so much more sense now.
Everything's just coming together. I want to know whether or not we had a choice to watch that clip or not, or whether or not free will even exists. What was it the guy said, though? Why he said something about free will being why Aron thinks he was a god.
Yeah, it's just another one of those like red herrings or attack on someone's character, like an ad hominem that desperate people use. I mean, I don't know how desperate this guy actually is. I don't really know exactly how stable this guy is.
Yeah, no shit. And, I call myself Fat Jesus because I'm here to redeem mankind with delicious Chipotle burritos. That's what's behind it. No, so the free will stuff, though, I like talking about free will, but it's another one. So I've talked about this with a few things. The Kalam cosmological argument, whether morality is objective or subjective, and then free will. Really fun things to discuss. I could not think any of them were less important to actually how you function day to day. If morality is subjective or objective, doesn't fucking matter. Don't be a dick. If the Kalam is valid or not, which by the way, I actually reject the first premise, or at least don't accept it because it's non-verifiable. But whether it's correct or not, doesn't get you to Christianity or Mormonism or Islam, so pretty meaningless there. The best it could do is get you to deism, and deism, as we all know, is just lazy atheism. And now in this situation of free will, I think I have it, or I feel like I have it. I actually don't think I have it. I'm somewhat of a determinist. I'm somewhat of a person who believes in a deterministic universe, but it doesn't really matter. Don't be a dick whether you have free will or not.
Yeah, I think that the whole free will thing a lot of the time is, first of all, I don't think a lot of people who invoke arguments about free will even understand what they're talking about in the first place. And second of all, I think it's just an excuse to derail arguments or insult and with it being Rob from Long Island, sorry, I hope it's not an ad hominem to say that maybe not the best person to, get arguments from and take them to heart. I did really enjoy in this clip. I think my favorite part was just the fact that Eric got kissed by the god Aron Ra. I mean, he's now been blessed by our savior. I mean, how lucky can a guy be,
I like the part where he said the guy doesn't know how to think about things. That's kind of summary of what you were just saying. Okay, we promised cringe, and the cringe is here. The cringe is coming. Everybody hide your kids, hide your wife, because they cringing everybody up in here.
By having shows like this. And, I mean, I don't come to your house and try to convince you to be a Christian. And, okay, so this is what I would do. I don't believe in...
Okay, hold on, Ruth Ann. Hold on. So you found our YouTube channel where people call in to us to talk to us, and you're comparing that to us going into your home and forcing a conversation on you. Is that right?
Well...
Because that really doesn't add up, does it?
Well, not exactly, because...
Not even close.
Well, you're a danger to the youth because they have access to YouTube. And it really bothers me that, one day my nieces and nephews, I don't have kids, but my nieces and nephews can come across this and start believing this stuff. And that's the problem, It's like,
Sorry, that's our live studio audience.
Yeah,
They're hoping that your nieces and nephews find the show.
So imagine that your neighbor invites you over for dinner, and then you walk into their house and go, "What the fuck? Why did you break into my house?" That's exactly what's going on.
But the first thing that she said was, it's not like Christians come into your home and try to convince you. Isn't that literally what they do? Once again, you're talking to a Mormon. They do that. That's their play, actually.
No, Jimmy. They just go to the front porch. You have to invite them in. It's totally different.
Right. I am so tired of the narrative, though, of like, why this actually happened to me last week with a person who is also Mormon. She's somebody that I've seen be very skeptical in the past, and I thought she was on her way out of the church, but ended up overcoming her faith crisis. But her whole thing was like, she mentioned being disappointed to find out I had a channel that shits on Mormonism as well as other stuff. And I was like, well, it's important to me, and I don't know why you'd be disappointed in that. And she's like, well, it's not like I have a podcast going around trying to tell why atheism's shitty. First of all, if you actually think atheism is shitty, start your podcast. I'll come on it gladly after you get a few subs.
I don't really see a lot of atheists saying, you know what? It's completely wrong that anyone would talk about Christianity and try to get someone to believe in Christianity. I mean, there's shitty ways of doing it. There's just dishonest ways of doing it. But just talking about it in general, talking about what you believe in an honest way, that's fine. I don't really think that there's a lot of atheists out here saying that is just inherently immoral.
And beyond that, it's their problem is they want us to shut up, and we aren't shutting up. And it's like, well, why even come after these things? We're not doing this to you. You know what you are doing? Let's just stick with Mormons for a second. You have congressional representation. They have over a dozen Mormons in the House, and they have in the Senate. From those are just the Utah senators and congressmen. I'm sure there are a couple of Mormons in Idaho and some other places. Atheists don't have that. And then the Mormon Church, for example, is actually competing, despite being the fraction of the size, competing with the Catholic Church for the richest religious entity in the world.
Yeah, I don't think that religious people a lot of the time are okay with atheists having even just a little bit of a voice. They think that this little tiny, squeaky wheel is going to break the entire machine. Maybe they're right. Maybe it will. But it seems like they're trying to squash it as soon as they see anything. To me, that seems to indicate fear. I don't know what you think about it.
I actually think it's a condescending belief, to tell you the truth. I think what it is they are saying, we believe our beliefs to be honest and yours to be dishonest. Because just as a thought exercise, if you're religious, just imagine if you found out it was all a lie, as I think I did with Mormonism. So all of these people I grew up with, my family, all the people I care about are falling for a scam. They're giving up 10% of their income, a lot of life. They've been taught to be bigots, but under the guise of loving people, hating the sin, but not the sinner. And yet the sinners are the ones killing themselves before they're 18 in Utah right now. So it's a matter of like, we're cool with all the ways we express ourselves religiously, but not yours, because, what harm are we really doing? You're not actually examining the question and looking at our perspective of like the people we care about, or just people in general, are falling for what we think we have discovered to be bullshit. And that's my motivation. So fuck off.
It's laziness and it's bigotry all wrapped into one, I think.
Yeah.
This might be one of my favorites, other than the whole pyramid thing, because I like that for very different reasons. But I think Eric makes a good point here, and you'll understand what I'm talking about here. He models good behavior, not only for theists, but for the audience that watched this clip.
I was talking to someone who was a young earth creationist and also a Christian, obviously a pretty devoted Christian. And I had started modeling the importance of saying, I don't know, to things. He was a friend of mine, and so if I didn't know something, I was very quick to be like, oh shit, I don't know this thing. Let's find out together, right? The most intellectually honest thing that you can do is say, you don't know. That way you open yourself up to learning new things. And so the day came when I asked him.
Bring him along with
stuff
you.
like that, yeah.
On that.
And you know what he did? He said,
What?
I don't know. He said, I don't know. And you know what? He came to a really shitty reason afterward. But the fact is, he started.
He said, I don't know.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a step.
Well,
Yeah.
I would call that atheistic conditioning.
I like it.
I don't know how I feel. No, I'm just kidding. I do know how I feel about this clip. I don't know is a super important thing, and people would get over themselves a lot if they would accept it. This is one of those times I want to get up on my soapbox a little bit here, though, because this is a place where I see the atheist community not doing great either. There's a lot of atheists who are wonderful skeptics and that don't have this problem, but there's also a decent portion. Some of them are some of the people we give platforms and voices to and love to listen and watch that also have a problem with saying, I don't know. And I don't know doesn't mean I don't know, so I must default to your position. It can mean I'm still skeptical, or I'm still learning, or I still even veer toward this position over here. But there is a lot of problems with I don't know on both sides. However, I will say I think the religious side of it's worse because when they see an I don't know, they go, let's inject God and let's come up with what the answer is because nobody else has a better answer. And that's not any way to truth.
So when you say I don't know, it does say something about your character. I just think that there are misunderstandings about what it really means about you. I think that people think that when someone says I don't know, it means that they're like submissive, or they're just admitting defeat, or maybe they're not intelligent, or they're not researched, they're not studied up on these issues. Really what it says about your character is that you're humble enough to say, and you're secure enough to be able to say, yeah, like I won't speak on that. I don't have to be arrogant and peacock my knowledge on this. You can just admit where you don't know things, be honest about it. I think that people saying I don't know is one of the most admirable actions you can possibly take within a discussion like this. And the fact that Eric is doing that to model it, to me, that's really impressive. And I really respect that Eric does that. I try to do the same thing, but I think you're right. I think that too many people on obviously the religious side, but on the atheist side too, there are too many people that refuse to say I don't know when they really don't. We need to let everyone know it's okay to just say you don't know when you really don't.
Absolutely. And to stop assuming that any answer is better than no answer. If there's an I don't know, whatever you can pull out of your ass is not better than that person's I don't know. Now, speaking of issues where people maybe need to take an I don't know position, but also err on the side of respect, Talk Heathen isn't afraid to get into those issues that are complex, that get a little dirty from time to time. And so that is what this next clip will set up, and we'll talk about it, and we'll try and not suck at it.
No, I have not had this conversation with somebody who's trans.
So I will tell you from experience, I fucked up. And maybe me giving you my fucked up story can help. Okay?
Go for it.
All right. So I said earlier on, I have a friend that came out. They're actually a trans advocate and a amazing human being, wonderful friend of mine. And they were, I have said they, if you go back, I haven't said he or she, I've been saying they, because they decided that they wanted to go by that. And so it was interesting for me. I'd never really come across it. And I said, why? And they said, well, because when I take a look at, the difference between sex and gender, and you know the difference between sex and gender, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So when you're looking at gender and you're looking at gender stereotypes, my friend took a look at both of both of them and went, you know what? That's me, but that's me too. And I'm actually like that, but I'm also like that. And so if I went binary and said, I'm really female, or I'm really male, you would be excluding something truly important to them. And so they asked me to use the gender pronoun they, them. And I said, so you're like Pat.
But
I said,
my problem is,
hold on. I said you're like.
My problem is
well, hold on. Let me just finish. I said, so you're like Pat from the Saturday Night Live sketch.
Right, it's Pat.
And I didn't realize it. They were really gracious. And they said, Eric, I know you love me, and I know that you wouldn't intentionally hurt me. Pat was a joke character, and Pat really was the absence of gender, when in reality, when you look at they, them, and you look at those different gender, classifications like that, it's trying to best put a pin on who you are. And I'm speaking as a dude that is not experiencing this currently. So I'm doing the best that I can. I can tell you that I cringe, and I am so ashamed of having been like, oh, so you want to be a genderless joke. But we do live in a society where people who are outward and are trans and in the community, they face people who want to kill them. There are lists of people, trans people in the United States who are murdered every year, and it's really tragic. And the thing is you need to focus, really, Karl, you need to focus on, it's less about whether or not you offended them, and it's a whole lot more about whether or not they're safe to live in the world that we inhabit, right? That's the important part. And if you're worried about offending somebody, be honest, be open. Holy moly. I can't tell you how many times I've screwed up, and how many times I've needed to learn, and how many times I've had to admit that I was wrong, or maybe, I'm right every once in a while, but you put yourself out there, because when you're authentic, when you're genuine, you're not going to offend them. And if you do, maybe they've got something else going on in their life, but that's not your problem. I mean, just try to be caring, try and be empathetic. I guarantee it's going to get you far.
I think that Eric makes a really good point, that ultimately just honesty and compassion comes first. It's not always about these specific actions, because we don't always know how to act in complex situations involving sex and gender and our friends and family who we love and any transitioning. I mean, it's confusing, but ultimately hold up just being honest and being compassionate. And a lot of the time you work with someone that you're trying to make sure that you're showing respect for, and it works out. You don't have to complicate it a whole lot more than that. I think that Eric, once again, models good behavior on this stuff. Yeah, you're gonna mess up for sure, and you can't beat yourself up about it too much. Just be open, honest, and ready to learn about this stuff above all.
Right, and I want to remind people that bigotry has to do with being intolerant of people, not being intolerant of ideologies or beliefs. So let's say you genuinely don't believe being trans is a thing. I think you're wrong, but let's say you believe that. I think at the end of the day, what's important here is don't be a dick. Don't be an asshole to people because you don't agree with their beliefs. And the problem is, so I've done lots of things with trans people and non-binary people on my channel, and they are always attacked personally, as though what they identify as has somehow offended the person watching this thing, and they attack them. They start speculating about their genitals, and they just start being an asshole right off the bat. And honestly, I think the thing you should be thankful about, even if you don't believe that the reasons these people's identity are what they are, is that you aren't going through and having the same life experience this person is, because you were born as a cis human being, a cisgendered person. That's great for you. Other people don't feel that way, and whatever the reasoning is, they're going through what is very real for them. So I don't care whether or not you disagree. You are not the arbiter of people going around. And by the way, I've yet to see it actually be a person who is a scientist who's familiar with these topics that are going out and saying, no, absolutely not. And in fact, let's use the pronouns they don't want to hear and purposefully hurt them because that's what's best for them. That shit doesn't really happen. Jordan Peterson tried to take a go at that, have a go at that. And his representation of his argument turned out to be totally false. It was predicated on this idea of a law that would make it illegal to misgender somebody, which wasn't true. Yeah. Just don't be an asshole and don't come up with these stupid arbitrary rules for why you are not going to, at the end of the day, give people what they feel is true of themselves. We've already seen this before with gender orientation orientation. We've seen it with race. And I'm sure that there are countless other examples of people just deciding, because I'm certain that this couldn't be the case, because it attacks my masculinity or attacks what I think about myself. I'm sure that this has been a repeating pattern, and this will just be the next one that has to be taken care of. But anyway, I'll get off my pissed off box.
And I don't think that, as far as name changing or pronoun change, I don't think this is actually that new of an issue, because in certain religions, I mean, you'll hear some Orthodox people say that they have a name, they have a Christian name. And so some people will go by their Christian name at all times, right? And so we've already been dealing with calling someone something different, maybe partway through their life after one name has been established and they want to establish a different name. So there are people that have already dealt with this. And a lot of them, I would say probably a majority, are religious people that have dealt with this kind of issue. And it's not really much of an issue in society, but when it comes to trans things, then yeah, people just flip their shit. And it's kind of ridiculous. I think that there tend to be underlying reasons, like real reasons, why people wouldn't want to use certain pronouns and a different name for someone, other than like, it's inconvenient or whatever. I think that a lot of the time that's just that's a front for something else. I can't say for everyone, but I think that's what I've seen. But you can't pretend that this is just a new thing that's happening. In so many ways, this has been an established process that people have gone through for basically all of human history.
And while we're on the topic, can we stop with the bullshit of like, but what matters here is the language. I'm not going to say zir, zer, because those words are made up. Words are always made up. And if it's somebody you know and somebody you care about, and if you give a shit about not making people feel like shit about themselves, fucking respect it. There's going to be lots to learn. There's still lots of science to figure out. By the way, to those who are their hardline, nope, everything is just whatever's between your legs. The science isn't looking good in your favor, especially as it develops more. But I digress. Stop pretending you're a fucking like grammar champion. And this next clip actually kind of speaks to that a little bit here.
You had a caller who was confused about whether or not they could actually be used as a grammatically correct singular person pronoun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I know the answer.
And it can be. Unfortunately, as someone who works in an English department and goes to school in English departments, I encounter this all the time. I tell people my pronoun is they, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't. Like, I respect your gender identity, but I can't use that pronoun. It doesn't sit with me because it's grammatically incorrect, and that's BS.
So
because,
why is that BS?
Well, first of all, that's thinly veiled transphobia. And the
Eric.
thing is, we use non-gendered pronouns all the time.
Could you give me an
For
example?
instance, yeah, I have students who often leave stuff in my class. And so, like, when someone leaves their glasses in my classroom, I will say, hey, who left their glasses? Because I don't know if it's a student who is male, female, trans, whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is referring to one person with a non-gendered pronoun in the singular sense.
So you're saying that anytime you don't know whether or not the pronoun is he or she or whatever, that we naturally go to they, them?
We do. And that's been happening since the late 1800s.
Okay, so it's not just some newfangled SJW.
So what you're saying is that the social justice warriors invented this last week, and now they're trying to destroy our grammar? That thing that we're so proud of?
Yeah, so the actual point here is not only is they, them acceptable, it already is a non-binary pronoun. It already is a non-binary pronoun, and if you don't know the gender of a person you're talking about, you use it in place of a gendered pronoun. That's not always been the case. They even mentioned that it was back in the 1800s that it's changed, but language already evolves and develops. And I think people might wonder why we're bringing up this issue again, but I think it is important, especially to the atheist community, because one, this is one of those places where the atheist community, to a person who is actually trans, does not appear to be a welcoming place. And the atheist community should be a community for anybody who is not a bigot and an asshole and a dick. And so these are people who just want people to recognize that I've gone through this and it took forever to figure out who I am, and finally I'm making sense of it, and not be met with just assholes saying no. And by the way, I, Mr. fucking nobody, am going to tell you that you can only choose these identities to be from, and your identity is invalid. Just, I think I've said it 9 times now, but don't be a dick.
Even if it was totally grammatically incorrect to say they, to refer to just, a single person. Why is that more important? Why is it more important to be grammatically correct than to not be a dick? Why shouldn't it be more important for you to respect someone that you apparently respect their identity? Shouldn't it be more important for you to do that than to speak in a way that's grammatically correct? It makes no sense. It's a ridiculous set of priorities.
I absolutely think I agree with you 100%. And here we are, 2 cisgender dudes talking about gender, and by no means are we either the arbiters of what's right with this issue. But it is useful, I think, to broadcast allyship. And the fact of the matter is, we're still in this place right now where a trans person with a platform, their platforms don't do as well as others. Some of that's the algorithm on YouTube, for example. If you post pro-LGBT stuff, because of the way the algorithm hits it and flags things, it's less likely to make its way out there. So be an ally and stop being a dick.
Yeah, I think everyone has the right to speak on whatever issue. But when it comes to actually trying to gain a more subjective or personal perspective on these issues, you kind of should listen to someone who's gone through some of this stuff. So yeah, cool, listen to me. I wouldn't be talking if I didn't think that you should listen to what I have to say about it. But go out and make sure that you're actually informing your perspective with a few different viewpoints, especially including people who are actually trans.
Yeah. And stop strawmanning the situation. And fuck, dude, no one's going to make you fuck a trans person. That's not what this is at the end of the day. But by the way, they're lovely people, and it's a wonderful experience.
Okay, so hopefully we've satisfied talking about trans issues here. Of course, always great to go learn more about it, but we'll move on.
I think that we've solved all the issues and there will never be another problem.
Of course, yeah. But Eric is now going to set up a line of questions when talking to Pastor Eugene from Oregon here, and I think it goes pretty phenomenally well.
Real quick, do you think he's a pastor named Eugene from Oregon, or do you think maybe his name is Pastor from Eugene, Oregon?
You know what? That's a really good point. I have no idea.
Let's watch.
If there's evidence for something, do you need faith?
No.
Which do you think is better, faith or evidence? Because one is going to lead you to my book being true as well. The other is going to lead you to a scientific revolution in a world where you can call me on a cell phone.
I never thought of this.
Yeah, it's a good thing to think about.
You used to call me on the cell phone, but Jesus Christ, cue the mic drop graphic. Hey, I'm doing the graphics. I could do a mic drop graphic. Nah. Anyway, your thoughts first.
So this line of questions is just extremely powerful, obviously, as you've seen here, especially if your interlocutor is actually honest. And the pastor on the line here was really honest about this. He had never thought about it, which seems almost ridiculous to a lot of us in the atheist community, but a lot of people haven't thought about this. And, it's okay. We can't fault them for having never thought about it. We have to praise them when they do, and they admit when they're wrong, when they say, I don't know.
Precisely. Absolutely. And so we already talked about I don't know is important, but also being thoughtful. Now, I do want to draw let's put a line down in the sand. Being a skeptic doesn't mean everything is acceptable. And so this is something that I ran into recently in a conversation with a person who was trying to get me to accept basically all versions of woo. They'd be offended I said woo again. They didn't like it the first time, but that I discount things like essential oils, that I discount things like alternative medicine, drinking your own pee, astrology, and saying that I'm not being skeptical enough because I deny those things. And it's kind of that old stupid argument of, well, you can't prove God doesn't exist. And so God is meaningful to people. So since you can't prove he doesn't exist, you're not being skeptical by saying, I don't believe he does. That's not what skepticism is. Skepticism is the lack of belief until you have a good reason to believe in something. So to say that my lack of belief in something else is me not being skeptical, and this is only vaguely related to the point, but I'm on a hot streak. But to say my lack of belief is not skeptical, that's actually where skepticism comes in. And then my doubts on top of that, I have good reason for those doubts. So anyway,
yeah, no, I totally agree for sure.
Cool.
Just in wrapping this one up quickly, this was kind of a question that led one of my friends and an ACA a show host now on Truth Wanted, my friend Objectively Dan. This is what led him to really question his faith. The question was posed by Anthony Magnabosco, and he started realizing, faith maybe isn't actually a great thing to rely upon for your beliefs. And now he's an atheist with an awesome new call-in show.
Yeah. It's funny how I feel like I've seen it so many times. And this is one I can't identify with from back when I was religious. And usually I can identify with most, but I think had a person taken me down this line of thought, while in the moment I might have denied it, it would have sat with me really hard. But you can get religious person after religious person after religious person to admit that faith is a pathway to anything, that you can believe literally anything based on faith, but they don't care. They don't separate, or they have this concept of, but my faith is the type of valid faith. How do you reconcile those? And the answer to the question is, I put it in the bag of things I don't reconcile. I just believe without worrying about these problems. And I don't know how they get there. Now here's some more wisdom from Eric.
Look into it. Talk to some people, get into the community. And when it comes to saying, you know what, I really think we should do this, I really think we should bring the people who are affected and have them in on making decisions, because we shouldn't be making decisions for other people. We should let them and allow them and encourage them to be able to have their own voice. Exactly. Also, check out the Gaytheist Manifesto. Callie and Ari are fucking amazing.
So I do want to point out that these clips were sent to me, and while the general theme of this is, I just realized with this clip, I don't fully remember what the context is. This is Karl, so I think this was the same person they were talking about trans issues with. So I think, and whether it's this or not, this is what I'm going to lend it to, and this will be our little message of the day here. I think what they're talking about is kind of what you were talking about, Drew, the concept of include or go have those discussions with those people. Stop isolating yourself from those hard questions. So whether it's a trans person or a queer person, stop making decisions about them without them.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I don't think I could have put it any better myself.
Well, thank you. I'm Genetically Modified Skeptic, and we will see you. No, I'm kidding. We have one more clip.
God damn it.
Yeah. We've got one more here. Anytime somebody tells me I actually said something with some depth, I always think like, well, I should probably put it on a t-shirt then, right? Maybe a hat. Anyway.
Well, don't make decisions about them without them is fantastic. I really like that.
That's already a common, like, I think that's from the civil rights era even. But okay. The most recent version I heard of it was Jim Helton from American Atheist. His daughter opens for him at conventions, and she is like just one of those very charismatic speakers, and she was the last one, and she actually said, stop making decisions about us without us. So it was, but that's the actual line that's been used in movements from the no decisions about us without us. So gotcha. Without them. It still has the same nice ring to it. I just am not trans, so I wasn't going to say us.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. We're going to get a little sentimental, And this is, what's funny is basically this is going to happen every 6 months or so. We'll do these clips things that times well with events that Eric and Jaime are usually doing simultaneously. And the last time we did this clip show, it was myself and EJ Sorrell, a wonderful person who joined me, and we talked about some of the conversations they had with some others. But during that recording, this event was also going on, and this was something Jaime said during that event. So get your tissues ready.
Since we're getting heavy and personal, you said it's 12,000 now subscribers?
Yeah.
Very recently,
a little over.
in the last 17 weeks, 18 now, dreams of mine came true that I didn't know I had. So.
All right.
Godlessness, damn it.
Everyone's
making me cry today.
Yeah, I think it's time for our tagline. So for any believers who actually happen to be watching and put up with all of our crap up until this point.
Hey, it was a good show.
We don't hate you.
We just think you're wrong. Conclusions are unjustified.
Eric is such an affectionate hugger. Do you see the way he tucked into his shoulder? My understanding is that Eric's just an affectionate guy. Drew, don't you have some kind of photo or image or something to?
Yeah, and I'm sure you can go ahead and put it up on the screen. I was at the ACA recently to be on Truth Wanted, and what ended up happening was Eric fell asleep while watching the Atheist Experience. I'm sure that says nothing about the show. It was a great show. But I decided to cuddle up next to him and show my affection for him. He woke up right after the picture was taken, and we just kind of cuddled there for a minute, and I tried to play it off, but it was a good day. And then later on Sunday Mass, I think Mark put that up on the screen behind Eric and I. It was awesome. And this selfie happened. Eric is seriously the nicest guy, and so that was right as they were approaching 12,000 subscribers. That was 18,000 subscribers ago. They just passed 30,000 recently. So obviously, congratulations. Talk Heathen deserves it. It's a dope show, even though I haven't hosted it yet. But I kind of have because of this. But I haven't. You know what I'm talking about. I haven't done the calls yet. I haven't done the live hosting. One of these days, Alice. You'll get there for sure. I mean, they had me on, and so I mean that's their bar. That's their low standard. I'm pretty sure that you should make it on sometime soon. Yeah, if Drew can be on, they'll just let anybody on. No, actually, that's one of my favorite episodes. You did really good. I also like Jim on there. The artist guy that we did the clips of here earlier. Is it Dan? I think it's Dan. He was a really good co-host as well. But it's hard to beat the Aron Raw and the Matt Dillahunty episodes and the Tracy episodes. Those are all true. Those are all top tier, but I'm going to try to beat them. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up, but my alternative name for this episode is basically Eric from Talk Heathen kicks ass for an hour straight. Like that's pretty much what it is. I mean, how much awesomeness have we said that Eric has actually put down here? There's been mic drop moments. I do also really like Jaime's long why to the cringiest clip on here. Yeah. But yeah, Eric just totally stole the show, and I'm trying to be as affectionate as he is, obviously. And so, I had a lot of fun with this. Jaime definitely had some good moments too. Jaime overall is an awesome guy, and he's been a fantastic president for the ACA. I don't know if everyone knows that he is currently the president of the Atheist Community of Austin. He's done a wonderful job. They're doing a lot more. They're reaching out a lot more. They're interacting with people a lot more, and that's just been really fucking cool. So, but in the meantime, we should probably say goodbye. Thank you all for joining us. I am Mr. Atheist. Check out my channel, Mr. Atheist. The link to that is down in the description. I'm going to let Genetically Modified Skeptic say his thing too, but the link is not in the description for him. No, I'm just kidding, Drew. It's not even my choice. This is a Mark decision. Drew, why don't you say goodbye to the people? All right. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm Genetically Modified Skeptic. You can find me on YouTube, Genetically Modified Skeptic, Facebook, the same name, at GM_skeptic on Twitter. And the links will be in the description because Jimmy has no control over that. Come check out my Discord as well and chat with me there. And, until next time, stay skeptical.
But Mr. Atheist needs your subscriptions way more. Should we try their sign off together?
Yeah, we should try their sign off, I think.
Cool. 3, 2, 1. We
Wait.
think you're wrong. Wait, should we do it again?
No, it's we don't hate you. We just think they're wrong.
Oh,
Or
that's
we just
what it
think
is.
you're wrong.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. 3, 2, 1. We don't hate you, but
we
I
just
love
think you're wrong.
Chipotle.
God damn it, Jimmy.
Sorry. It's funny because it's always goddamn it Jamie and then goddamn it Jimmy. It works.